What is up, YouTube? I'm Devon DaVinci, leader of the Renaissance Crew, and you're watching DaVinci Reacts. Before I get into this video, just a quick announcement. I have a new setup that I'm going to be putting together in a minute. So after these videos are done, I will have a new setup that will hopefully allow my videos to have better quality. You will notice that in tomorrow's videos, if everything is set up right. I hope everything works out. Let's go ahead and check this out. This is the second episode to extra credits Irish potato famine videos. They're little mini series, and I will try to carry through with the entire series. Now, if you want to get to extra credits channel, they have I'll have a link at the end of this video. It'll be an icon that pops up right over here. If you click on it, it'll take you to their channel. You can watch their videos, like, subscribe, all the other good stuff. And I encourage you guys to go check it out because they have a ton of historical events that you would not think they would have covered. Like, there was a lot of stuff that I saw that was a surprise to me. There were some things that I've watched that I haven't done reactions to. I just enjoy because it's a topic that I have been interested in. So just know I'm not going to cover everything on their channel, of course, but just the key things that really catch my eye that I think that you guys would enjoy as well, I'll do a reaction to. So let's go ahead and continue this. This is, it says the Corn Laws. I guess that's like the subtitle of the video. So again, I don't know what to expect. I don't know anything about the Irish potato famine. I didn't know that America was one of the main factors that started it. So yeah, that's a surprise. Now, I've heard people say in the comment section that like it was a British genocide and things like that, and I honestly have no idea what side of the argument is what, because like you have one side that doesn't go that far, then the other side does, and I'm wondering where the truth lies. So I'm gonna have to do more research into it myself to see what is going on. If you do have an idea of like knowledge on the potato famine, go ahead and leave it in the comment section. Even if people don't agree with it, or if they do agree with it or whatever else, this channel, again, as I say many times, is nobody's safe space. Don't think that you're going to get into my comment section, give your opinion, and then when someone says contrary, you act like they don't have a right to an opinion and tell them they need to shut up or something, because that's not what this channel's about. Feel free to express your opinion, whatever it is, as long as if it's not too extreme. But anyway, let's jump into this and see what it has to offer.
London, September 12th, 1845. The press operator runs off issues of the Gardener's Chronicle. Over 6,000 copies, fresh and ready for tomorrow. The editor bursts in, waving a piece of paper. They must stop the presses and insert a front page notice. No, it can't wait until next week. The potato blight has reached Ireland, the notice reads. Crops around Dublin are perishing. It ends with a question. Where will Ireland be in the event of a universal potato rot? But everyone knows where it will be. In the embrace of hunger. 2 months later, the Gardener's Chronicle was in the minority when it predicted agricultural disaster. Over the past 2 months, the press sent mixed signals. Some said the potato crop was fine. Others that the blight only affected a few counties. So to get a sense of the problem, Prime Minister Robert Peel sent a scientific commission to get solid numbers. Wait, pause the history for just a second. The Prime Minister's name during the potato famine was Peel. No one else thinks that's a little funny? No, I know it's a serious story. Come on, stop looking at me like, fine, you know what, it's fine. I'm sorry.
Okay.
His name's Peel, though. Now, that commission was in the House of Commons, telling Parliament to expect 80% mortality in the potato crop. They'd devised methods for keeping the blight away from harvested potatoes, but these proved ineffective. The news troubled Peel. In the summer, there had been hints of crop loss, but that was nothing new. Irish potatoes were unreliable.
Okay, so what was the solution to fixing the problem? Like, what did they ever come to some method of getting rid of the bacteria or whatever, or did they come up with like a cure? And if this bacteria were to infect potatoes again today, do they have a medicine to get rid of it? Or you know what I mean, a vaccine, a chemical compound, something to get rid of it.
There'd been 16 potato failures since 1800, and when crops failed, tenants couldn't pay their rent. When tenants didn't pay, landlords brought police and troops to throw them off their land. That meant riots and retaliatory livestock killings. It would also mean secret societies like the Molly Maguires and White Boys ambushing landlords and middlemen in their carriages. And those previous potato losses were only regional. This was the whole island. Instability worried Peel. A few years before, the Irish Member of Parliament, Daniel O'Connell, who had campaigned successfully against anti-Catholic laws, had set his sights on repealing the Act of Union. O'Connell's outdoor meetings had attracted 500,000 people, and the government had to threaten force to disperse them. Since then, Peel had taken a more conciliatory approach, but famine could upend everything. And the reports were bad. Now that it was November and the full harvests were coming in, the scope of the problem was becoming clear. Not even harvested potatoes were safe. In Western Ireland, a poor farmer had buried his harvested potatoes in a pit, muttering a prayer at how lucky he'd been. No blight. But a few days later, he opened the pit to check them. Half were totally rotten. Panic struck the whole west of Ireland, where the climate was too wet for grain or oats. "I cannot describe in language strong enough," read one account, "the frightful and awful alarm of the poor people. May God, in his bountiful mercy, avert such a disastrous calamity." Peel had his faults, but inaction was not one of them. The son of a textile industrialist, he was the first prime minister to come from business rather than the aristocracy. He'd risen through the civil service with sheer hard work.
I was trying to wrap my head around what the hell was up with that ketchup and egg thing, and I'm like, what do you mean faults? What's going on? Then I realized, okay, he's putting ketchup on eggs. That's a fault. Yes, it is. That's fucking disgusting. Don't at me. It's disgusting.
And a few big gambles. And he was about to gamble again. Ireland would need food, but Peel would have to walk a fine line. He was a Tory, and his Conservative Party were hardcore trade protectionists, particularly due to support from grain merchants. Whatever he did, it couldn't undercut or upset the grain market. And then there was the opposition, the liberal Whigs. They were similarly hardcore when it came to free trade economics. They hated any government intervention in the market. So in other words, the Tories wouldn't support bringing in foreign grain because it would cut local merchants' profits, and the Whigs would shoot down any intervention on price.
This is interesting because based on this description, it sounds like the Tories are more of the liberal wing and the Whigs are the conservatives, but I could have sworn nowadays aren't the Tories the conservative ones? If that's the case, then did Europe, just like in America, have a political shift? Is that what you're telling me? That would be if that is true. That would be interesting, considering how mirrored it is with America. Like, that's funny.
Meanwhile,
I could be wrong,
Daniel O'Connell and a Dublin group proposed their own measures. Forbid turning grain into whiskey, bring in foreign grains, institute public works, and stop exporting Irish grain, beef, and oats to England. Neither party, Peel knew, would stand for that. After all, grain imports were already a sensitive split, as the two parties consistently brawled over the Corn Laws, a series of protectionist measures meant to keep cheap American grain out of the UK. Oh, by the way, in Britain, corn means grain. Got it? Cool. Peel had a plan to thread the needle, but it had to stay a secret. He sent an agent to Boston on a mission to buy 100,000 pounds worth of maize or cornmeal. Peel's agents then started shipping it to Ireland on the quiet. His bet was this: since maize didn't grow in Britain and no British merchants traded in it, this wouldn't be a direct intervention in the market. But the shipments still had to be kept secret, or British merchants might freak out about the competition and withhold their shipments to Ireland. The plan wasn't to feed Ireland with cornmeal. It was that cheap cornmeal would keep food prices low. Maize would not be given away, but sold at cost to counties, and paid for by landlords who would fundraise through their own poor relief organizations. The government would then match those funds and deliver the cornmeal from regional food depots. Peel also instituted road building projects where people could earn a wage to buy the cornmeal. It would be revenue neutral. Ireland, he said, must feed Ireland. If that sounds like a convoluted bureaucratic nightmare to you, you are correct. The idea of fundraising was a particularly terrible one. It meant that the poorest counties got less food aid than the richer ones. Parish priests complained that no one in their county had anything to donate. If they could, they would have already bought food. Irish farmers ended up pawning their few possessions to buy cornmeal. Others had no choice but to sign up for the hard labor of working on the roads. There were logistical hurdles too. Irish infrastructure was dismal, with a minuscule railway network and roads that deteriorated outside major cities. Maize shipments had to navigate those rocky networks to reach rural areas. But even before that, the maize had to be ground into cornmeal, and Ireland only had 2 mills that could accomplish that. And even when people got the cornmeal, they had to learn to cook it properly or else it made them sick. Scurvy, previously unknown due to the potatoes' high vitamin C content, started cropping up. So people who couldn't get...
Since when did potatoes have high vitamin C? What kind of potatoes were you growing over there in Ireland? In Ireland. Like, you guys had super potatoes. I was never under the impression that potatoes had vitamins. Like, I'm somebody that's really big when it comes to studying nutritional facts and things like that. And I didn't mean to rhyme that, but potatoes are carbs, calories. They're a quick carb source, but they're very empty. That's why they're called empty calories. There's nothing in them except for calories. You only eat them if you need to fit your macros for the day. Like, where are these vitamin C rich potatoes at? What happened? Ireland has a secret that they're not telling the rest of the world. They have some super potatoes.
Due to the potatoes' high vitamin C content, started cropping up. So people who couldn't get the relief food went hungry, and people who could plunged deeper into poverty, keeping themselves fed. Some even subsisted on spoiled potatoes. There were food riots and a few high-profile attacks on wealthy citizens. In one county, 1,500 Irish farmers turned up, all armed, when a group of British troops arrived to enforce an eviction. But overall, there was no major risings and no mass death. People survived. Peel, however, would not, because his maize and work programs were not the end of his plans. Though a Tory, he'd come around to the free trade views of the liberal Whigs. He disliked the Corn Laws, which kept cheap American grain off the British market, artificially inflating bread prices, and saw in the Irish crisis an opportunity to push for repeal. Now, if it helped Ireland, so much the better. But that was secondary. He would use this famine as a cudgel to beat his opponents with. He took on the Corn Laws, decrying how high tariffs contributed to starvation in Ireland. And he argued that greed, as much as Blight, was starving the Irish farmer. And this was explosive. In 1845, the Corn Laws conjured up the same emotional weight that surrounds issues like healthcare and fuel taxes today. Champions of the law predicted that repeal would collapse the agricultural sector, while the repeal camp cast images of a starving British public unable to afford bread. This move pushed Peel out as Prime Minister, but he was back 2 weeks later when the opposition failed to form a government. Long-term, repealing the Corn Laws would prove good for Britain. Cheap food helped fuel the expansion of its industrial base and build its empire, but it did nothing to help Ireland. In fact, by tying famine relief to the Corn Laws, he'd thrown the Irish poor into a partisan crossfire. Now, members of the pro-Corn Law camp doubted there even was a famine in Ireland. They spun conspiracy theories that Peel had embellished reports of Blight in order to galvanize the repeal effort.
That sounds familiar nowadays. As someone from America, that sounds very familiar.
Conspiracy theories that Peel had embellished reports of Blight in order to galvanize the repeal effort. And this theory gained credence when news emerged that the Scientific Commission had overestimated the 1845 crop loss. They had predicted an 80% mortality for the potato, but actually, the figure ended up being about half that. It was still a dire situation, sure, but not the agricultural apocalypse the scientists had sold Parliament. This ugly partisan warfare meant two things. First, an entrenched bloc in Parliament now saw famine relief as a partisan issue, tied to the Corn Laws. And second, it created an impression that reports of crop loss in Ireland were always exaggerated. But the truth boiled down to this. In the future, families would die with empty bellies in Ireland, while in London, politicians would dismiss reports of famine as alarmist. Peel won in the end. On June 29, 1846, as his cornmeal deliveries were finally in full swing, He crossed the aisle and voted with the opposition, repealing the Corn Laws once and for all. But he got to enjoy his victory for less than 24 hours, because the next day, both parties revolted and threw him out of power. The Whigs took over, high on their victory. And Peel's relief program, which had let the Irish poor barely scrape by through the first year of the crisis, came under the full control of a civil servant named Sir Charles Trevelyan. His first act was to cancel the food shipments. After all, the task was done. Next year's crop was about to come in. But the 1846 crop was a total failure. And the bad times, the Great Hunger, were about to begin.
So the term "the bad times," is that like an actual description of a period in time, or is it just is he just saying like the bad times, like these were just bad times, or is that like historically the name of this particular period in time, the bad times? Because I've heard people say that term before, and I'm wondering like if it was just, you know, like how World War II is described as what, 1938 to 1945. Like that's a specific time. And then I always assumed the bad times were associated with the fighting for what was Ireland fighting for? Were they fighting to reunify Ireland, or, you know, Britain and Ireland fighting against each other in the 1900s? I thought that was the bad times with like the IRA and everything else. Again, I don't know anything about the history, so if you guys can go to the comment section and let me know. I've heard that term before, but I don't know. The fact that he's using it right here makes me think that maybe there's multiple, or it's just a description for when times are bad for Ireland. Again, I don't know. But I am willing to learn. So if you go in the comment section down below and let me know your opinions about the situation and things like that. I know sometimes these discussions can get heated, but just remember, this is an online forum. No matter what somebody insults you, or no matter what somebody says to insult you, just know they're behind a keyboard, behind a monitor. Chances are hundreds of miles away. They're not going to do a damn thing. So don't take it personal. If it gets too bad, just at me. Put a hashtag or something. Devon DaVinci. I'll get it. I'll come in. I'll review the discussion. If somebody is throwing around insults unnecessarily, I will delete the comments. And if it gets to a point where they're a repeat offender, they will be banned. I had to do that with the last video. I didn't ban anybody, but I deleted some comments because, like, it's one thing if you're going to insult somebody that has already insulted you and you're returning fire, but don't be the first to initiate the insult, because, like I said, that'll get you deleted and possibly banned. So if you can't have a discussion where you can defend yourself using just words, logic, then accept that you don't have a good position. If your position is so convincing, you should be able to convince somebody else. Now, with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and wrap this video up. I am Devon DaVinci. Hopefully you've been a little more enlightened. I certainly have. Like I said, I will have to look more into this, because these types of videos, you should never look at these and think that you know what's going on. If anything, take these videos as a springboard to jump into more knowledge. Go out and look up more. Like this video gives you the terms. Go out and look up and find out like what the truth might actually be. Like, I've seen people in like oversimplified videos or in things like that where they'll get mad and be like, well, this guy didn't talk about this, or this person, they ignored this, and it's like, I'm not sure if they're saying that because they think that me watching it, I'll possibly get some bad information and now I believe that's bad. But just to give you a heads up, when I'm watching these videos, I'm never taking it like 100% as fact. I'm looking at it as, okay, well, so this is something I need to learn more about. This is something I need to learn more about. So I'm not going to like just listen to this and be like, okay, this is what it is. They said that it wasn't that big of a deal, so therefore it wasn't that big of a deal. No, there's plenty of context into everything, so look into it. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. I'm about to wrap this up, so I'm going to give you the deuces. I'll hopefully see you guys on the next video, right? You'll appear in that next video, won't you? Okay, then. Just go to my channel and check out my videos. There's a lot of them. You might find one that you really like. I'm going to give you the deuces, and I'm signing out. Deuces.